Over the past 4 days, Manila has served as the center of ASEAN diplomacy as I chaired the 59th ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting and related meetings. These engagements brought together fellow ASEAN foreign ministers and our external partners to discuss issues that matter most to our region. As we conclude this week, allow me to highlight some of the key outcomes. First, the 59 ASEAN Ministerial Meeting reaffirmed ASEAN's shared commitment to advancing the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. During the meeting, we adopted important documents including 1. The 59th ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting Joint Communiqué, which reflects ASEAN's common positions and priorities on issues affecting our region. This particular document has been a product of a series of negotiations among the 11 ASEAN member states, and I assume it's already in our ASEAN website. The guidelines on the modalities, second is the guidelines on the modalities for engagement of ASEAN with high contracting parties with the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, which is a priority for our chairship. These guidelines establish a framework enabling high contracting parties to engage more deeply with ASEAN, particularly those without formal partnership arrangements with ASEAN, and provide new avenues for practical cooperation in support of ASEAN community building. And the ASEAN Foreign Minister Statement on the evolving situation in the Middle East, which I assume you have seen a copy of this already, which expressed the region's collective call to parties concerned to exercise utmost self-restraint and avoid any acts that may further aggravate the situation. The ministers also agreed to confer Sectoral Dialogue Partner status to Germany and Qatar in recognition of their enduring partnership to ASEAN. It was also during this ministerial meeting that we welcomed Turkey as the 12th dialogue partner of ASEAN. During the extended informal consultation on the discussion, or rather on the implementation of the 5-point consensus, I had candid and focused discussions on ASEAN's current engagement with Myanmar. Building from our informal discussions in Bangkok last week, we discussed how ASEAN could assess measurable progress in Myanmar, including the prospect for a multi-year, long-term special envoy in all of these discussions. ASEAN member states reaffirmed that the 5-point consensus remains to be a primary reference of ASEAN in addressing the crisis. Second, ASEAN's engagement with our external partners reaffirmed the strength and breadth of our external relations. Through the post-ministerial conference with our 11 dialogue partners, ASEAN reviewed the progress of the comprehensive strategic partnerships and discussed ways to further deepen cooperation across a wide range of areas, including maritime cooperation, connectivity, trade and investment, digital transformation, transnational crimes, cybersecurity, energy, food security, disaster management, climate action, and people-to-people exchanges. ASEAN also convened trilateral meetings with Turkey, Norway, Switzerland, and Brazil, reflecting the growing interest of our partners in working more closely with ASEAN and contribute to regional peace, stability, and sustainable development. Third, ASEAN continued to demonstrate the relevance of ASEAN-led mechanisms in addressing regional and global challenges. Earlier today, we convened the ASEAN +3 Foreign Ministers Meeting, which reaffirmed the importance of solidarity and practical cooperation amid growing global uncertainties. The meeting, which brought together ASEAN member states and the +3 countries, namely China, Japan, and Korea, discussed recent updates on the ASEAN +3 Cooperation Work Plan 2023-2027, which serves as a guide for our continued community building in the region. We discussed current and proposed potential initiatives to bolster our regional resilience, food and energy security, supply chains, and people-centered cooperation in East Asia. I likewise chaired the 33rd ASEAN Regional Forum, where participants exchanged views on regional, political, and security developments. We adopted the Manila Plan of Action 2026 to 2036, which will guide the forum's work over the next decade and announce ASEAN's collective decision to welcome the United Kingdom as the 28th ARF participant. We concluded the AMM-PMCs with the 16th East Asia Summit Foreign Ministers Meeting, or EAS, bringing together ASEAN and 8 EAS participating countries, namely Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, Russia, and the United States. We called for stronger practical cooperation amid geopolitical tensions, transnational challenges, and the growing impact of emerging technologies. We have also taken stock of the implementation of the EAS Plan of Action 2024-2028 and advanced preparations for the 21st East Asia Summit in Manila this coming November, including proposed leader statement on strengthening regional stability and renewal and combating cyber-enabled fraud and related offenses. Our discussions reaffirmed the EAS as the region's premier leaders-led forum for strategic dialogue and cooperation and a platform to translate dialogue into collective action. Taken together, these meetings demonstrate ASEAN's enduring convening power. This word, convening power, has been received. I have been receiving this from many foreign ministers, and its ability to foster dialogue, strengthen partnerships, and build consensus at a time of increasing political uncertainty. While we have accomplished much over the past 4 days, our work under the Philippine chairship continues. Tomorrow, we will commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. We will welcome 4 new high contracting parties, namely Sweden, Poland, Romania, and Lithuania, as represented by their respective foreign ministers, and convene for the inaugural high-level conference of high contracting parties, the first gathering of its kind since the treaty was signed in 1976. The conference will focus on 3 thematic sessions, namely conflict prevention and preventive diplomacy, maritime security and cooperation, and addressing emerging threats and challenges. The Philippines is honored to lead this important milestone as ASEAN chair and committed to sustaining the momentum of our chairship. Thank you, and I now would like to answer some questions. But prior to that, I just want to tell you that I think Manila, in the past 4 days, has become a venue for the powers to meet and to talk to each other. I'm sure you have heard of the meetings between Secretary Rubio and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, Secretary Rubio and Minister Lavrov. Actually, me alone, I have about 38 bilateral meetings. And for the whole foreign ministers, I heard it's about 120 bilateral meetings. Our National Organizing Committee, led by Director General Helen De Vega, has difficulties trying to get bilateral meeting rooms for all of us. But I think that's really a good news, and that shows also the respect for for the Philippines of many of these ministers. And if you scour the news all over the world, Manila is in the headline. Thank you very much. I'm ready to answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Secretary Lazaro. I will now call those who have questions. Yes, please.
Good evening, Madam Secretary. I'd like to take advantage of the 2 questions we're allowed to ask. Ron of Kyodo News. About Myanmar, I'd like to ask about the prospects of its return to ASEAN official meetings. Are we seeing it later this year or under Singapore's chairship next year or Thailand?
I'm sorry, can you ask the last part of your question?
The prospects for Myanmar returning to the ASEAN official meetings.
I guess right now I can say it's still it's still far off. At this point of time, it's still the 5-point consensus that is still being the foundational document that we are looking at. During the discussions with the Foreign Minister of Myanmar, there had been a lot of questions on their compliance with the 5-point consensus. So there's still, it may not happen yet, but let's see how the compliance that they can give. But ASEAN is patient. ASEAN is still looking for whatever they can give. Of course, we had also meetings with ethnic armed organizations, which I think the information has been given, and there might just be possibilities. Now, on the aspect of humanitarian aid, I will be leading a delegation sometime in the fourth quarter of this year on a humanitarian mission to Myanmar to look into the and to help and provide certain necessities for the vulnerable communities in Myanmar. Thank you.
My second question, ma'am, is about the maritime security and cooperation, which you mentioned in your opening statement of the ARF as one of the things you want to focus on. So I'm curious how you tackled the South China Sea issue and the Strait of Hormuz situation at the ARF and EAS, if you can.
Yes, those were issues that were discussed, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, which is becoming a dominant issue for all of us. However, there's on the South China Sea, what was given attention is the code of conduct that ASEAN now and China is geared towards the conclusion, hopefully the conclusion of the code of conduct by the end of this year. And this seems to be the focus of many of the countries, and I can see some political will from all the countries involved.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening, Secretary Lazaro. My name is Leung Wai-kit from CNA. Thailand has brought up Daw San Suu Kyi's name as part of an indicator to measure the army's progress. My first question is, how can ASEAN prevent Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi from being a political bargaining chip? And second, would you consider getting access to Aung San Suu Kyi as a demonstrable progress? And what next step would that take us? Thank you.
Well, first of all, to answer your question about what Thailand asked, I think you should ask the Foreign Minister of Siasat because he's been making those statements. However, to your question, if ASSK or Daw Aung San Suu Kyi can be some kind of an element, perhaps, but what is still important for us is the 5-point consensus. Again, those 4 points that has been discussed. Thank you.
Yeah, next one.
Hi, Secretary.
And then
Good
you.
evening. My first question is, could you expound more on what the significant progresses are in the ongoing negotiations of the Code of Conduct, given that we are looking forward to its conclusion by the end of the year?
Well, I can only say that I think you know the milestones already. The scope, the geographical scope, whether it's legally binding or not, terms of reference, as well as the connection between the Declaration of Conduct and the Code of Conduct. But I think if you look at if we see it from our point of view, it's the progress being made. The terms of reference is very important because still the definition of, let's say, self-restraint. Now there's been some kind of consensus, a growing consensus, and that's for us a good progress. And I think eventually, with the political will of many of our ASEAN friends, including China, we'll see. I think that you know very well that we have monthly meetings. These negotiations have not been done this way. Since the start of January, there have been monthly meetings of the negotiators, and this is now part of the political will that we intend to finish this code of conduct by the end of the year.
Okay. And for my second question, you did mention earlier that you're going to Myanmar in the last quarter of this year. What are we expecting to come out of your visit, and how would this impact ASEAN's ongoing assessment on the situation in Myanmar?
Well, this is also a situation whereby some of these areas are really occupied by certain how would you say that? Ethnic organizations, and therefore this means that we're entering certain areas. But I think the impact here is really trying to reach out to the vulnerable communities in Myanmar, and of course, permits will be asked from the junta government, and that now talks about their ability to really reach out to us. And this is not only, this is of course, this humanitarian mission is with the help of the AHA Center, the ASEAN Humanitarian Center based in Jakarta. And of course, we have also sought assistance of the UN OCHA, the Médecins Sans Frontières, the World Food Program, and many other international organizations and NGOs.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Good evening, ma'am. Celerina Monte from NHK. I believe you mentioned earlier that there will be some benchmarking to be put in place with regard to the 5-point consensus regarding Myanmar. We're just curious, you're not planning like to lower the benchmark just to accommodate?
Now, let me just be very candid here. I think benchmarking is something that is really a standard to be looked at. No, it's not lowering. It's just putting some elements to as measurable as possible. And it is not the intention of ASEAN to lower its standards. It even wants to keep up with the standards. And in direct, how do you say this? It really in relation to the 5-point consensus. Now, this benchmarking, it's just a document, a non-paper that was given by one of the ASEAN member states, and this is now in the hands of the senior officials. They'll try to flesh it out and look at and study it carefully on how this can help in the issue of measurable progress.
Ma'am, regarding the South China Sea, these recent incidents in Ayungin and this morning in Scarborough Shoal, how would these incidents be factored in the Code of Conduct? And I believe during your bilateral meeting with the Minister Wang Yi, he kept on insisting about their position that it's the Philippine soldiers who attack their troops, the CCG.
Well, I don't know where you got that, but in any discussions, it's negotiations, it's never only the position of China.
So
now, how it will affect, of course, that's now part of the discussions of the Code of Conduct. Remember that the Code of Conduct is it's all in consonance with the 1982 UNCLOS, as well as no diminution of the rights of third parties, and it talks about the governance of the seas, the behavior in the seas. So that's what it's all about.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, next question.
Good evening, Secretary. Congratulations on a successful hosting. Michael Flores of Reuters. Ma'am, can you update us on whether you've been given permission to access Aung San Suu Kyi, or did the Myanmar government already give its word whether you can access her, or was it rejected? Thank you.
In answer to your questions, it's exactly his question, because that statement came from Foreign Minister Sihasak. We'll see. I have no idea, but I'm just being very practical. I may or I may not be able to see the lady, but of course, let's see from efforts from other quarters.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Let him.
Yeah, just a very brief follow-up. But what's the likelihood that you will?
I cannot
based on your
speculate.
discussions with the.
I
with
do
the
not want to
Myanmar
speculate because I cannot read the mind of the Myanmar government now. Of course, it would be good if I can see her, but remember, The mission, it is a humanitarian mission to the certain areas in Myanmar. The intention is not really to meet the lady. If the lady comes, if I see the lady, as mentioned, or rather by the Foreign Minister Sihasak during the press conference in Bangkok, then that would be very good.
All right, thank you. Next.
Okay.
Hello, Secretary Mara from the Straits
Hi,
Times.
Mara.
Ma'am, going back to the Code of Conduct, are you concerned, ma'am, that different interpretations of arrangement in a disputed waterway, like the provisional understanding that we have on Ayungin Shoal with China, could create confusion or precedence in the negotiations for the COC? And I say that because maybe about an hour ago, the DOF said that you felt that you had to correct mischaracterization of that provisional understanding.
I really don't know how the code of conduct will come out, but there might be a possibility that certain provisions, or rather of there might be an effect on the provisional understanding. We'll see, because the code of conduct is the code of conduct.
Ma'am, and just one more. Just to clarify, the Chinese ambassador claimed that there was construction at the BRP Sierra Madre and that allegedly is a violation of the provisional understanding. Once and for all, ma'am, is that really part of the provisional understanding that we have with China?
There is no mention of that undertaking in the provisional understanding.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question over there. Yeah.
Hi, ma'am. Pam from AFP. I understand that the discussions are ongoing, but may we know what are the initial benchmarks that we are looking into to measure the success of ASEAN's approach to Myanmar, and what will ASEAN do if these benchmarks are not met?
Just to answer the last question, if the benchmarks are not met, then there is failure to comply with the 5-point consensus. Again, we repeat, we always go back to the 5-point consensus.
So will you tatanggalin na po natin yung Myanmar sa ASEAN? Will that be?
I think
will that happen?
wait. First of all, it's highly speculative. I don't know what will happen. Let's just wait for the senior officials. Ask me this question in November.
Okay. Well, for my second question, how many ASEAN members are against inviting Myanmar's president in November versus those who are in support of inviting
Sorry,
him?
can you say that again?
How many ASEAN members are against inviting Myanmar's president in November versus those who are in support of inviting him?
There's no number, because the issue here is, have they complied with the 5-point consensus? If there is a compliance, then that means it will change. There's no view whether there's number of countries who doesn't like Myanmar to sit where on their seats. So it's not. It's really the compliance with the 5-point consensus.
Thank you. Perhaps
One more.
one last question, please, from you. Yeah.
Hello? Hi, Secretary. Good evening. Tristan from Newswatch. Just first, a follow-up on the provisional understanding. Is it under review, or will the Philippines and China continue to abide with that understanding?
We had no discussion on the provisional understanding.
Okay. On the statement of ASEAN in the Middle East conflict, the regional bloc expressed concerns over what is happening in the Middle East. But you have Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister telling ASEAN to take a stronger stand on the Middle East and said that violations of international law should be spelled out instead of pretending nothing happened.
That is the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister talking. As far as ASEAN is concerned, you have the paper. That is our position and will remain as our position.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just give him the last
all right.
one.
Okay. The very last question.
Hi, Sec. Thank you for doing this. Ramon from Nikkei Asia. Could you share what discussions have taken place at this week's meetings regarding the border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, including any efforts to support dialogue and de-escalation? Thank you.
Can you say the last one?
including any efforts to support dialogue and de-escalation?
Yeah. Well, let me point out that even during the discussions between during the EAS and the ARF, actually both countries have their situational issues, both maritime as well as land, but they have both submitted to, what's the word? Conciliation. Compulsory conciliation under the auspices of the United Nations. So this is a very good opportunity, and let's see. We'll wait for that and let the process begin. One more?
I guess, ma'am, last question. Given the importance of stable China and Japan relations for regional stability, does ASEAN see a role for itself in encouraging communication between these two countries?
Between?
Between these two countries, China and Japan.
The fact that both ministers were present here during the discussions in the ARF and the EAS, then that shows the convening power of ASEAN. We are hopeful that ASEAN will be able to play a role, but again, highly speculative, but I think we have the capacity because they have respect towards ASEAN. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.